Hi, welcome back to Scott from Wessex Blaze. I've got 20 years experience in manufacturing, engineering and education. I like to pass on my knowledge to people that will watch my videos on the areas, generally speaking, of knife making, the outdoors and prepping. One other little thing, I'm a little bit on my sideline, little thing I do is I'm into science. So I did 3 science A-levels and I've completed the science module S106 of the Open University. One of the things I really enjoy is evolution. And I'd like to do a little bit of a show and tell, a little bit of a preamble to my presentation on the food and preps needed during a SHTF situation. But it's very much in with the rule of threes for prepping. So if you just bear with me for about 5 to 10 minutes, you could skip straight through to the food if you want that, but if you want to listen to what I'm saying, these things that I've picked up over the years, now that I'm 50 and I've been skimming through science and evolution, they really do all slot into place when it comes to prepping, survivalism, bushcraft, the outdoors, and making life as comfortable as possible. So basically, within the evolution of us as a skin sort of hairless monkey, we've been very adaptable. We've sacrificed certain features on our bodies, and we've expanded certain areas that are beyond basically what other animals have got. So we have no claws, we have very pitiful teeth, but we're a heterodont. That means that our teeth have different surfaces and different uses. And as things change and adapt, as our jaw would recede, and our skull at the back didn't have a crest anymore, so we have smaller jaw muscles and our jaws get even smaller, it has allowed our brain case to get bigger, and it's a monster of a brain. The disadvantage of that is it burns calories like nobody's business. So we're expensive to run, but as a tool, it's our most valuable tool. It allows us to predict things in the future based on what we've seen already. And it also allows us to imagine what can happen, and we can do things in order to achieve it. And we've got hands that can make it work. So we've got this brain, okay, that is burning calories faster than most animals burn in a day running around. We have a very expensive machine to run. Crocodile can have 1 meal and last months. A snake can eat a small deer and last for months. A tiger, on the other hand, he has to eat every few days. A lion has to eat every few days because he's mammal, he's exothermic. We're exothermic, but our brain puts us at a severe disadvantage when it comes to calories. We need to consume a colossal amount of calories compared to most other things. Now, with the rule of threes that I mentioned on a previous video, the survival of us as a monkey is based on, I would say, fundamentally 3 issues. It's thermoregulation, hydration, and I'd like to say nutrition as opposed to food. Okay, so I'm giving them different names in order to make you try and open your mind as to what we're actually trying to do. Okay, thermoregulation. If we don't stay warm, not only will we start shivering and our body system starts shutting down, the food that we may have in our tummy as it is will be struggling because we're actually colder. So the reactions won't be going on so fast. So we'll be getting less energy out. So it would pay us to get warm, okay, because we're trying to get the food out. Our reactions within us are based on us being a creature that creates its own heat in many ways. Okay, so we can keep ourselves warm. Again, rule of threes, 3 ways. This rule of threes again comes into play. So we can wear stuff, okay, that's now insulating our body. So the heat that we are producing, we're trapping, okay. We can light a fire and collect heat, so you can actually physically warm something from something else. So we stand under the sun, we'll warm up. We have a fire in a doing a camp and we put a big load of set of logs that are dry, and not only are we getting the fire heat, we're getting a little bit of infrared bouncing off the fire reflector, and then we put something behind us as well, so we're trapping the heat in our clothes and we're delivering heat to us. Okay, and the other way that we can keep ourselves warm is with the food that's in us and the reactions that's going on inside us as well. Again, rule of threes. So with all that sort of being said, we've got up here is it's burning energy like a furnace, and we do need to keep ourselves fed. But what I want to say is it's nutrition. We're so complicated. We need a lot of trace elements. We need a lot of a varied diet in order to give us the optimum nutrition to perform right. If we're just going to mooch about in the woods, pick a bit of fruit, pick up a bit of a small beetle here and there, maybe recognize a plant that's got a decent tuber on it for some very basic carbohydrates, that as a creature in small family groups, we got along, we made it. But it's only when we harnessed carbohydrates, when we started as civilizations harnessing wheat, barley, potatoes, and then fermentation and other ways in order to collect vast amounts of carbohydrates, that we could actually then store things up in a way so that our energy was constantly being renewed, because we could just dip into the stores. We've been doing it for, let's say, 10,000 years as an example. But what works great is if we don't just base our civilization on one carbohydrate, okay, and one fruit source. It's great to have a variety of things. So with that sort of vague preamble, okay, and you can see how rule of threes has come into the conversation once again. I'm going to go through some preps, as it were, which is just a system of food that I not necessarily stockpile, I just accumulate, and then as I buy each one, as each date gets slightly shorter, I just swap it out and use the shorter date. It's as simple as that. Okay, it's not something that you need to spend a fortune on in order to create a super prepper bunker. It's just so you've got a 3-week supply at any time in your household. So thanks for listening. If you haven't, I suppose 8 minutes in, someone jumped to the food. But what I want to say is it's more along the air of its nutrition. So I'll move the camera around and do a few talks to camera now on the elements that I've got for nutrition, storage of it in-house. 2 slices of seeded wholemeal brownish shortbread, thick crunchy peanut butter, and runner bean relish. And a cup of milk. It's easy, isn't it? Right, well, we'll start at the very, I suppose, basic beginning. Man managed to harness wheat, which is a grass, and by harvesting it at the correct time, milling it down into dust, he could store it for a long time, and then mixing it with water as and when needed. With a fire and a hot plate, he could make flatbreads. So we'll just start with flatbreads. Obviously the self-raising will be making what we call bread. Okay, but we'll start with the plain flour. I'll leave a link to a recipe and an easy to follow sort of set of instructions in order to make flatbreads. But flour is very good because it's absolutely packed with calories. Okay, it's got a few nutrients in it, and it's the shelf life that we're looking for here in an emergency situation. Okay, so plain flour, so you can do your flatbreads. If your only source of power that you've got is an open fire and a baking tray of some description, a dash of oil, and you could do them on a baking tray. If the power's on and the water's on, you can knock yourself out because your fridge should be still running. You could be doing pancakes and things like that. Okay, so easy, simple, packed with calories. Rice, again, stored easily in these plastic packs. But a word here from someone who used to be a vegetarian. I grew up years and years ago, I suppose when I was born, so about 7 or 8. So I grew up with Diary of a Small Planet, my dad used to read. So I'm aware of the benefits of, you don't just cook rice. You put rice with something like peas, or you put it with black beans, rice and beans, rice and peas. Think about twinning rice up with something else. The amino acid makeup of rice complements when you mix it with beans and creates a far better range of amino acids to sort of complete the protein. So it's, the sum is greater than the sum of the parts, if that makes sense. So I would encourage you to consider, so have a read up. The internet's still working, everybody. But rice and beans, rice and peas is far better for you. You can cook them virtually together. It's far better than rice alone. And you don't just have to have cheap white rice. Brown rice, you get some, I just get more of a nutty flavour with it. Okay, so mix it up. Days and days, and white rice is going to be as bland as hell. So mix it up, put some black-eyed beans in it or something. Rice and peas, rice and sweet corn. Just mix things up and cook it all together. I also want to mention something like lentils. So those pulses, don't rule them out, because they store really well, and they are worth eating, as is couscous. The rough guide is about 140 calories for 100 grams, and they're a kilo each, which puts each bag at around a dozen portions. So, dozen portions between a family of 4. You know, a day and a bit, day and a bit, day and a bit, day and a bit. There's over a week's worth of food just there for a big family of 4. So that's a guide as to how far 5 bags of rice will go. You're looking at a week if you were down to basics, but please research. The internet is available to everybody else. You can Google what you need to. You just got to type it in, and Google tells you mostly the right answers. Rice and beans is the way to go. Okay, so moving on. This is something I keep in the house because it has a very long date. I mean, it's March now, and the date we're looking at is into the 2nd week of April. So this is something that's always available in the house, and of course when I would be using one, I'd be buying another one. So at any point in time, I've got a month's worth of storage, and it only takes putting the oven on and warming it. It's only half baked, so I haven't got all the prep to do with flour, water, clean hands. I just literally chuck it in the oven. Now you can do this on a fire if you had to. You could make some form of oven out of a metal box, and you could just warm these through. Very simple, cheap, and you do get about 4 or 5 weeks life out of them. Oh yes, keeping it simple. So these are ready-made tortilla wraps. It's one of those things that if your family is quite prepared to eat them, it allows you to stock up on them and keep a surplus at home. But I'm very fortunate in my family. Nobody's allergic to peanuts. One thing you need to consider. You know, peanut allergies are not to be sniffed at. But if you can stomach it and eat it, and everybody enjoys the peanut butter, and why not? You only need the basic ones for food stores, and a bit like the rice and beans, peanut butter in a tortilla wrap. You're halfway there. You add a few things, I don't know, whatever you got vegetable wise, and you know, that'll keep you going quite happily. Open 1 pack a day. Be disciplined with keeping the air out of it. You know, it's simple, it's cheap, and it's not bulky to store because they're quite flat. And because the date's reasonable, I keep one of these around. This is more for a missed breakfast in the morning for the family. Take a couple of those, maybe one more, and you've got a bit of a break time snack. but they're individually wrapped, if you noticed. So even though you may have opened that bag, each one itself is in its own sleeve, and each one has its own date on, so it's easy to make sure you know how long each one's got. And if you've got one of these on the go all the time, you just replace it when it's used up. So basically, tortillas and peanut butter, that's one of the things we have as a reserve. Okay, and we're looking at man's harnessing of carbohydrates. These are oats. The only disadvantage of this is once you've opened the bag, you've got to be diligent about keeping it fresh, but very simple food. It could be mixed just with water, going for a very basic porridge. Fills you up, but if you can, I would add some dried fruit to it, like raisins or something, just to peak it out a little bit more. But you know, longish date, the only snag is you've got to be mindful of how you open that big bag. So you need to keep it in an airtight, dry environment. So these are things to have a quick nibble on, or you can add to your porridge. Bag of mixed seeds, which are getting you those oils, protein, and you got the dried fruit, the raisins, which are very calorie dense. And say, you know, decent pot that you can keep them fresh. Always worth having some form of dried fruit, some form of seeds. Once again, carbohydrate, long life. And what's that? February 2022. So here is the problem of forgetting about it in your pantry or storage or larder. These are things that will last and last. Always great to add a bit of tomato sauce, but be diligent about where you store it, and this will last years. If the power's still on, of course, you'll be out of options with cheese, but you will need something to add to it because it can be quite bland spaghetti. So think Mediterranean, so dash of basil or something. Tomatoes will always work. If you've got some tub somewhere for half a packet, wrap it up, get an airtight lid on it, and it won't spoil. But very calorie dense. It's one of my childhood comforts. Mashed potato and gravy. All you need is hot water and a dash of salt. At these prices, and like I say, it's long life. It's calories, it'll be hot, and the gravy does help because mashed potato, when it's reconstituted, is pretty bland, and that'll be a hot meal. Of someone like me, you can take plain food. Cream crackers, notoriously easy on getting filled up on these things. I can't really go to the cheap brands on these, so it's Jacob's for me. But if you were ever hungry, have 4 or 5 of them. You'll soon slow down. Just a way to just stave off hunger, and it'll slow you down. But you need a drink of water as well. So wait for the twin pack. So you should have 2 packages, an outer and an inner. Good shelf life. I'll say it should stave off hunger. So whereas I can take stuff pretty bland, something nice for the family who struggle to eat food that's pretty boring or pretty monotonous, something like this, easy oats. So if the power's still on, you can add milk. If the power's off, you can make some milk out of dried skim milk powder, and something hot, and a little dash of blueberries in there. Just perk up their day for them. Okay, change of scenery. At £1 to go, you may be a super duper prepper, expert survivalist, but it's a damn sight easier having it in ready to go. Flagon gallon jugs like this, it saves you having to purify water. For the sake of a few pound, if you've got these big jugs lying around, it gives you the container as well. Strong handle at the top, just in case the water goes out. Yeah, cheap value brand eggs. Keeping on a date because not the longest things going. I do keep them in the fridge, keep going longer. Plenty of options for what you can do with eggs. Pancakes, fried eggs, scrambled eggs just goes on forever. Very versatile, packed with protein. Be aware in terms of biological value that the egg white has a certain absorption rate of protein. The yolk's another different absorption rate, and you put the two together and you get more out of it. So it's a bit like rice and beans. If you add the yolk and the white, you get more out of the egg. But obviously everybody's diet is different. If someone needs to keep the yolks out for cholesterol reasons, well, to me it's a good cholesterol, but your own medical advice, you can follow, that's fine. And then dense calories, vegetable oil, absolutely jam-packed, and makes a absolute vast difference with the flavour of food. Frying it or boiling it, well, I'm a bloke, so it's obvious what I go for. But fried egg, don't even need the mains. Have a log fire, a skillet, a baking tray, saucepan, anything. Fried egg, a child could do it. Long life fruit juice. So smaller portions, so save all of it going to waste. And if you're going to do one, that's something that everybody's going to enjoy drinking, so you make sure you use that up should you open it, and the fridges may be out. I would go for a range of sizes myself, just to ensure that once you've opened the packet, that it's all been used up. You get sugars in this, and of course you get the fluid, and a bit of a zing. Just to brighten your day up, should it be on very plain food. Condiments, spices, a stock cube or two, cheap sauces, vinegar and salt. So you just don't know if you're on more natural food, you may not be having as much processed food, so you could be actually down on what your salt intake is. How would you know if you're not keeping count on it? So having spare salt allows you to maybe just add a little bit now and again, but there's plenty of salt in here as well. This here is something I picked up from Funky Prepper. It's just basically an absolute cacophony of spices and herbs all put together in one tub. So all the leftovers and bottles and whatever, sort of a cheap man's garam masala, but all goes together, and you just put it on your fried food or fried egg or in your scrambled egg or whatever it is, just to add a little bit of zing to your food. But it's also adding trace elements that you may not be getting anywhere else. So consider adding spices or herbs to your food whenever you can. Right, now this is something everybody will understand. Tins, jars and jam. It's not the best jam in the world, but the glucose, fructose syrup they put in it adds calories. A pickle. And you can't beat a pickle in a jar, and as long as that top is not depressed, it'll have long life on it. Chopped tomatoes. Or you can add that to your pasta, can't you? Just to, hey, before you know it, you've got a bolognese going. Man tins. Chopped pork and ham. Obviously there are brand names out there that rhymes with ham. Tins of tuna. Well, what can you beat that? Tins of tuna. And if you're really desperate, if you run out of cat food, the one there with spring water in, I wouldn't give the brine one if you ran out of cat food. So that's basically for me. But should push come to the shove, she's a madam, that cat. Sort of a meal in a tin, which is a chicken curry, and then basic carbs. A rice pudding in a tin. The cost of it is only like 22 pence, and I think the chicken curry was like 65 pence. So a whole lot there. We're looking at about £15, because the tuna and the meat are quite expensive for what they are, but long life. So you'll be working through your other stuff first, especially like the half-baked rolls. That's the first thing to go. So add a bit of peanut butter, tortilla wraps, add a bit of peanut butter, maybe a 1 jar of jam if you're being a good kid today. But you should be able to make this last. To be the last things that you go to, because they're the longest life. I generally try and have 1 jar in reserve. Cheap instant coffee, because, well, it's got caffeine in it, and you don't know how dodgy your water may or may not be. Depends how, if the water supply goes out. But nothing like a hot coffee. It may be cheap, but hey, you've been to service stations on the M5, haven't you? It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. If you could stretch the time out by having something interesting, fun, sweet, it will half make the friction a lot less in a household that's getting stressed out with a lock-in or quarantine. So these things here will make a huge difference. Budget biscuits, chocolate chip cookies, pence. Blocks of cheap chocolate, pence. Something nice just for them at £1. It may be worth it, because also it's individually double wrapped, yeah. So long life, and it's done all the packaging for you. And here, this is what I'm on about. Practice what you preach. This is the packet that's opened in house. When I get halfway through that packet, I might buy another one. So your preps are constantly topped up. You don't necessarily have to go out and buy everything all at once, because you haven't actually got anything. Okay? There's nothing wrong in having 4 bars of chocolate in reserve, or 4 bags of rice in reserve, or 4 packets of whatever, pasta, and as you use one, you buy another one, it goes to the bottom. Simple as that. And this is the damn it day. You just can't take it anymore. An instant ready, some form of very, very simple meal to prepare for one person who's literally losing it. Of all they can stand, they can't stand no more. And just rustle up some pasta and sauce. And the other one is this. The magic words. Simply add water. There ain't much to it. Mix it. And just plop some dollops on a metal tin of some description on some heat. Of some description. If the power's on, use the oven. If not, well, the average Boy Scout can do that. But man, what a difference that'll make. Just imagine the stress. You know, stuck inside the 4 walls on lockdown. Bugged out in the woods. Those, man, that'll make a difference. Meals ready to eat. Military ration packs. They're not cheap, but it's the shelf life that needs keeping an eye on things. Some things I don't mind eating when they're out of date, some things I don't mind buying or sourcing if they're a short date. Why? Things like this have been opened and eaten well past their time. So as long as the packaging's in good order and you've got a constitution or a cast iron gut like I have, you probably get away with it. But they're there, last ditch reserve. And some of them are pretty good, especially it's beyond the beaten track stuff. And the range of meals that's on offer now for the army rations is astounding. They even do vegetarian options, high energy drinks, chocky bars, fruit pulp and puree in little sachets. That's superb about a range of different meals, different tastes, just to break the boredom. But you know you're getting a really long shelf life. I'll leave a link underneath to someone who may have a few in store. But yeah, don't rule them out. Yeah, and it's the 21st century, so care for your animals, look after them. Dogs, cats, pets, parrots, fish, whatever. Is it worth the family stress if you lose Fluffy, Tiddles, or whatever? Anything for no stress. I'd like to think that any emergency situation won't get that bad that fluffy here becomes on the menu, but keep your animals happy and they'll give love back to you and make everything just flow along a damn sight better. If you are at that fast food restaurant, or if you have ordered that pizza and you didn't get round to using the condiments, additional bits inside, stick them in the fridge. They'll probably last at least a day, or blooming forever. So make sure you save these if you're not going to use them. Don't pitch them out, because they'll make a difference in a very plain meal. Now I do quite a lot of heavy lifting, weight training, and this is something that I have as part of my finish training. I come home and I have at least one of these. So it's a very easily absorbable protein and a carbohydrate mix and a mineral vitamin premix. So I'll go on the back and show you the sort of stuff that's in it. So it's not the same as fresh fruit, fresh vegetables. Those are the things that you would have in the house and use up as soon as you possibly could, if ever a fan situation turns up. But something like this, especially if it's not actually you broke the seal, will last weeks in terms of shelf life, and if you're frugal about using it, you'll make it last weeks as well. So I'll go to the back and show you the sort of range of nutrition that's in this tub from Reflex Nutrition. Okay, there's plenty of stuff in there, and it's got flora, fauna stuff for your stomach, gut. So that's what's in it, but that's what it's made of. So it's whey protein isolate, milk protein, but most of the carbs is oats and barley flour. So it's basically ready breakfast protein. So Scott from Wessex Place, so we're giving you a few pointers to things you can add to your, basically as a pantry, okay? And you're using that as a 3-week lead on, can't get to the shops, 3-week lead on shops aren't open, 3-week lead on blizzards, you can't get to the shops, 3-week lead on all the lorry drivers are going on strike, so no deliveries are going to the superstores, a 3-week lead on the petrol refineries are going on strike, so no diesel gets to the distribution centres. It's a 3-week lead, and that's it. And as you use something, you take the shortest date, you purchase something of equivalent that you know your kids, you know your family, and you know you're going to use, and then you just swap it in and rotate it around. It's not much more complicated than that. So I hope that's helped you out. Scott from Wessex Blades. If you enjoyed the video, give us some form of feedback, comment or a like or something, and feel free to share it on forums, so that you know the knowledge goes out there in some way, one way or the other. Okay, Scott Wessex Blades, thanks for joining me again.